The ring was sitting on the dashboard between them. The very same ring that Chet had thrown into the dark just a minute ago, far off the shoulder of the road, into the wet grass, into the fog. Leo stared at it and couldn't breathe.
This can't be happening. I put it back. I know I put it back. Chet didn't answer. He kept his eyes on the road, but his hands on the wheel had gone white. Somewhere beyond the swamp, an owl called. Once, low and hollow. An old woman's voice came from somewhere out in the fog. A traiteur doesn't do harm to those who leave her alone. Chet smelled the water miles before he ever saw it. Louisiana smelled different from Texas. There it smelled of dust, of gasoline, of hot asphalt. Here it smelled of something alive and rotting at the same time, of swamp, of decaying leaves, of something heavy that had settled into the air and wasn't going anywhere. The humidity was such that his shirt stuck to the seat back, and every few minutes Chet peeled it away and felt it stick right back again. 3 hours, said Leo, without opening his eyes. What? 3 hours you've been saying there's a city coming up. 3 hours now. Chet looked at the GPS. The screen was dark. The device had died back in Texas, right at the state line. Since then, they'd been driving by memory and whatever road signs they could find. Chet navigated by his own gut feeling. Leo called it plain luck, the kind that was going to run out eventually. I can feel it, said Chet. We're almost there. Leo opened his eyes and looked out the window. Cypress trees drifted past the glass. Huge, ancient. Their gnarled roots jutted out of the water like the fingers of drowned men. Fog crept between the trees. Low, white, slow. Fireflies blinked in the dark, flashing and going out again instantly. The cicadas were deafening. Chet had turned the music down first, then switched it off altogether. Leo said, "Beautiful." "I mean it," said Chet, not taking his eyes off the road. "We'll be there soon." Leo turned back to the window. The gas runs out first. The needle really was creeping towards zero. Chet could see it. He just preferred not to look that way. They'd just run a solid job in Texas. The scheme was simple. They sold a farmer a non-existent irrigation system, took the advance, and got out of town. Left before he could call anyone who mattered. The money was in the glove box. If they were careful, it should last a couple of months. But they were never careful. Leo shifted in his seat and said tiredly, "We're 30, Chet. We're already 30 years old." "I know," Chet said shortly. "When does this end?" Chet said nothing. A road sign drifted past outside, leaning, old, the name nearly unreadable in the dark. After a moment, Chet said, "When we find something worth stopping for, stop whining." Leo turned to him. "I'm not whining. I'm asking." "Same thing," Chet cut him off. Leo went quiet and stared out into that thick fog. Chet knew perfectly well what he was thinking about. His own repair shop. Normal work. Something you didn't have to explain at every traffic checkpoint. Leo was a decent mechanic. He had hands that were, as they say, God-given. But fast money always held more pull than honest work. And in the end, same circle, every time. Night, an unfamiliar state, an empty tank, and a GPS that had finally given up on them. That was how they lived. The town appeared without warning. First one streetlight, then two more, then a whole street of them. It was dim, like an old photograph. A road sign stood at the entrance. Bayou St. Charles, population 347. Chet nodded toward the windshield and said, "There." Leo answered quietly, "I see it." They drove slowly down the main street. A closed hardware store, a closed pharmacy, a closed barber shop. One streetlight blinked at even intervals, once every 3 seconds, like it was blinking,
Not a single living soul anywhere around. Just cicadas, just fog, just a strange feeling, as though time moved differently here, slower somehow, or didn't move at all. Leo looked around and said, "Dead town." "Quiet," Chet corrected. "Same thing," Leo shot back.
No motels, no hotels, not even a simple diner with an open sign. The car reached the very edge of town. The road narrowed sharply and wound through an old garden of massive oaks. That was when Chet saw the house.
A white wooden house stood under the oaks. It looked as though it had grown right out of them. A wide porch, carved shutters. On the front steps stood flowers, red, fresh, alive. A porch swing hung from the rafters. The house looked well kept. It felt strangely warm for a place like this, at an hour like this. Chet nodded toward the windows. "Look at that! What a beautiful house!" Leo sighed. "And we could ask to stay the night. Say we got lost." Leo glanced sideways at him. "You want to knock on a stranger's door in the middle of the night?" "The lights are on," Chet answered. Leo looked at the windows. They really were glowing. The light was yellow, warm, homey. While they were watching, another lamp came on out on the porch. A door opened. A woman appeared in the doorway. Looked to be around 70, short. She wore a dark dress with an apron. Wire-rimmed glasses caught the light on her nose. She looked at their car. She smiled and walked toward the gate, unhurried, as though she'd been expecting them for a long time. She opened the gate and gave them a cheerful wave. "Good evening, boys. Pull into the yard. Park the car. You'll spend the night here with me." Chet cracked his window. "Thank you, ma'am. We were just looking for a place." The woman nodded and explained calmly. "I figured as much, right away. You're looking for a place to sleep. Nobody ever comes through here at this hour, unless someone's really lost. There's no hotel in town anyway." She laughed good-naturedly. "I'll charge you very little. Let you stay the night for a small fee. A little extra on top of my pension never hurts. So come on in." Leo glanced at Chet in surprise. Chet was already smiling with satisfaction. Everything was falling into place just right. Her name was Mama Julie. That's how she introduced herself when they stepped inside the house. It was immediately clear. She wasn't expecting any other name. Inside, the house smelled of dried herbs, vanilla, and old wood. Valuable things were everywhere. Old photographs hung on the walls in silver frames, men and women in the clothing of past centuries. Bundles of dried herbs lay on the shelves, tied with twine. On the sideboard stood expensive silver candlesticks and a jewelry box with pearl inlay. In the china cabinet, old porcelain gleamed dully. In the corner opposite the door hung a large mirror. Its frame was carved dark wood, old, cracked. The glass was slightly clouded, the way glass always gets in mirrors that are more than 100 years old. Chet noticed it immediately. Mama Julie sat the boys down at the big table and immediately began bringing food. First came fried catfish, then cornbread and a fresh salad. And finally, she brought pecan pie and sweet mint tea in frosted glasses. Chet stared at all the food with genuine surprise. My goodness, all this food. You'd think you were expecting company. Mama Julie waved him off warmly. Oh, not at all. I just always cook a lot. It's just a habit. I can see you boys are hungry. Chet smiled. That's true. Haven't had a proper meal in a while. Well, that's just fine. Eat up, boys. Leo ate in silence and looked carefully around the room. His gaze kept snagging on the valuable things. He spotted the silver candlesticks on the sideboard, then the jewelry box. Next to the jewelry box, on a small dish, lay a ring with a large dark stone. Chet noticed that look. He pressed his foot against Leo's under the table, meaning
keep it together. Leo gave the tiniest nod and buried his eyes back in his plate. The atmosphere was very pleasant. Everyone was relaxed and easy.
Chet politely picked up the teapot and poured tea into the glasses. Then he poured a glass for Mama Julie. At a certain moment, the hostess turned toward the stove. Chet reacted instantly. With the practiced ease of long habit, he pulled out a white powder and emptied it into the old woman's glass, stirred it with his finger, then immediately picked up his own glass. Everything went perfectly. Chet took a sip and complimented her. "Wonderful tea, ma'am." Mama Julie turned to him and smiled. "Mint, from my garden. Drink up now." Mama Julie began to speak softly and evenly, the way you speak when you're remembering something distant. "There was a young woman who lived here. A traiteur. Do you know that word?" "No," said Chet. "That's what we call healers in these parts. Herbalists. Wise women. People came to her for help, to ease pain, to cure sickness, to bring peace back to a family. She helped everyone. People feared her, but they came to her anyway, because she could do things others couldn't." Leo stopped eating. "So, 2 men came into town," Mama Julie began. "Young, bold. One of them went to the local healer, claiming he needed help, said his back hurt. She took him in, made him a remedy, gave him an amulet. The fellow was polite and charmed the girl easily. She trusted him." Mama Julie gave a small smile, looking down at her empty cup. But the guest turned out to have rot at his core. While the hostess was distracted, he walked through her rooms and spotted valuable ritual objects, old silver, expensive things. A plan formed in his head immediately. He went back to his partner and said it plain. "There's enough in there for a year of comfortable living. We need to take it." The friend had doubts at first, was afraid to tangle with a healer. But the other one only laughed. "Just a regular girl," he said. "And all those rumors are nothing but foolish old stories." She fell silent. Outside the window, in the thick fog, the cicadas shrieked on and on. They divided the roles quickly. The sharper one went back to the healer and invited her for a walk by the river. "The magnolias are blooming," he said. "Wouldn't she like to come?" She believed him. She went. And while she was gone, the partner slipped into the empty house, started frantically sweeping up valuables. As a final precaution, he poured a line of salt right across the threshold. He'd heard the old story somewhere that a witch can't cross her own doorstep after that. Leo quietly set his fork down on the table. And then they come back. The hostess walks up to her porch and freezes. She sees the salt. She truly cannot enter her own home. And in that moment, she understood everything. Understood exactly what kind of intentions these two had brought with them. She turned to the one who had walked her to the river and said calmly, "Your buddy is robbing my house right now. I can feel him in there. Get out of this town, both of you, while I'm still feeling kind." Mama Julie let a meaningful pause hang in the air. The thief inside heard the voices and lost his nerve. He hadn't gotten everything, but he'd gotten quite a bit. He jumped out through a window and ran. That night, the partners met on the riverbank to split the take, argued over the division, came to blows. The old woman sighed heavily. Fishermen found them the next morning, both dead, strangled by each other. But how 2 men could strangle each other simultaneously, no one ever figured out. There were no other marks on the bodies, only the bruising at their throats, and the hands of the dead men reaching toward one another.
She raised her eyes and looked directly at Chet. The stolen things appeared on the healer's porch that same night, laid out neatly as though someone had delivered them. She simply carried them inside and never spoke of it again. A healer doesn't do harm as long as you leave her alone. But if you touch what is hers... She smiled softly and left the sentence unfinished.
Leo sat up straight. Chet was smiling. "Quite a story, ma'am." "It isn't a story, dear. It's the truth." "And that woman? Does she still live here?" Mama Julie looked at Leo for a long moment, several seconds, and he couldn't figure out what exactly it was about that look that unsettled him. "Maybe she does," she said. "Maybe she doesn't." She yawned, covering her mouth with her palm. "I'm feeling tired. I'll go to bed. I've made up the guest room for you. Get some rest. You can be on your way in the morning." She stood up, walked to her bedroom door, and stopped on the threshold. "Make yourselves at home, boys." The lock clicked. They stepped out onto the porch. The swamp damp hit them immediately, along with the sharp smell of night-blooming flowers. Chet lit a cigarette and said quietly, "You see all that? Silver, porcelain, the jewelry box, and the ring on the dish." Leo's face darkened. "I heard her story about the healer." "That's just a tale." Chet shrugged it off. "Old ladies love stories like that. Local folklore." "Then how did she know we were coming? Why did she walk out to meet us?" She saw our headlights from the window. Small town. Any car is an event out here." "But she said it straight out. I was waiting for you." Chet blew out a stream of smoke. "She misspoke. Or that's just how they talk around here. Good old Southern hospitality." Leo stared silently into the garden. Between the trees, a thick fog lay perfectly still. In the dark, fireflies lazily blinked. "We're 30 years old, Chet," Leo said, low and flat. "I want out of this game. I want to be done with all of it." "That's exactly what we're taking this chance for," Chet said, nodding toward the house. "The silver alone is worth serious money. The candlesticks are old, heavy. The jewelry box is pure antique. We sell everything in New Orleans, close out this year, maybe next year too. The old lady drank the spiked tea and she's sound asleep by now. I know the dose. She won't wake up. We grab the things and go. No noise." Leo stared into the fog for a long time. Then he gave a heavy nod. "Fine," he agreed. "Go on in. I'll finish my cigarette and follow." Leo was on his second cigarette when he spotted the owl on the branch of the old oak tree. A large swamp owl sat absolutely motionless. Leo had gone hunting with his father as a kid and knew his birds well enough, but this one was acting strange. It didn't move. Leo shifted from foot to foot, coughed on purpose. The bird didn't even turn its head. It was as if it had been carved out of wood. Something about it was just wrong. Too unnatural. Then the owl called. Once, low and hollow. The sound didn't come from the tree. It rose from everywhere at once, as though the night itself had exhaled. Leo startled. The cigarette fell from his mouth, and the phone slipped from his fingers into the wet grass. He crouched down quickly, found the phone by touch, and stood back up. The branch was empty. The owl was gone. Without a single sound, without a single wing beat, it had simply dissolved into the air. Leo took a step backward and went cold. At the very edge of the garden, right beneath the oak, a white shape was visible. Mama Julie was standing there. She was in an old nightgown, barefoot, without her glasses, gray hair hanging loose. The old woman stood rooted to the spot and stared straight at Leo, exactly the way the owl had just been staring at him. Leo froze. One thought hammered through his head. She's supposed to be asleep. Chet couldn't have gotten the dose wrong. This is impossible. But she was standing right there,
Thick fog swirled around her ankles, flowing around them the way water flows around a stone. Leo couldn't see her eyes in the dark, but he could feel her unwavering gaze on his skin. Time seemed to stop. He couldn't take it anymore. Leo began backing away. Step. Another step. Finally, his back hit the door frame. He groped blindly for the handle, yanked the door open hard, and practically flew into the house.
Chet stood at the sideboard. He was working in gloves, methodical and fast. His mind was completely clear, his hands moving on their own. The cloth sack was already half full. In went the heavy candlesticks, the jewelry box, and a porcelain figurine. The ring with the dark stone Chet had taken separately and slipped into his jacket pocket. He turned toward the table to grab one more thing and caught the reflection in the old mirror out of the corner of his eye and froze. In the clouded glass, the room was reflected. The sideboard, the open sack on the floor, and Mama Julie, standing directly behind him. She was very close, 3 steps away at most. Barefoot, in her nightgown, hands folded across her stomach. The old woman was watching calmly as he stole her things. Chet spun around, ready for anything. But there was no one behind him. An empty room, a dim yellow light, and the thick smell of dried herbs. He slowly turned his head back to the mirror. Mama Julie hadn't moved. In the reflection, she was still standing behind him, not moving, not making a sound, just staring straight at him. And Chet understood with horror that she wasn't blinking, not even once. He took a careful step to the left. In the mirror, Mama Julie turned her head to follow him in perfect sync, like a predator tracking its prey. Chet stepped to the right. The reflection mirrored the movement. Then he noticed that the old woman's lips had shifted. Barely, almost imperceptibly. The corners of her mouth had lifted by no more than a millimeter. And that silent, terrible little grin was the most frightening thing of all. Chet stepped backward, but in the mirror, Mama Julie took a step forward, closing the distance. In the real room behind him, dead silence. No one there. And at exactly that split second, Leo came crashing through the door. Leo was breathing hard, his voice cracking into a shout. "She's outside, standing right there in the garden. She's not asleep." Chet didn't even turn around. He stared blankly ahead and said quietly, "I saw her in the mirror." Leo went blank. What? What mirror? In the mirror by the sideboard. Chet swallowed hard against the dry lump in his throat. She was standing right behind me. I turned around. No one. Looked back. She was still in the reflection. Both of them turned their heads toward the corner of the room at the same time. But the mirror was already empty. In the clouded glass, only dead silence was reflected back. Leo slowly moved his gaze to the closed bedroom door. The panic had taken him completely. She knows everything. She knew from the very beginning. She was waiting for us. Chet threw the sack off his shoulder. We put it all back, right now. They began frantically pulling things out, working in silence, fast. The heavy candlesticks went back on the sideboard. The jewelry box was shoved back onto its shelf. The antique porcelain and small figurines were placed back into the cabinet. Leo's hands were shaking badly. He nearly dropped a figurine. Chet looked calm on the outside, but inside everything had clenched into a block of ice. Did we get everything back? Leo whispered, looking around the room. Think so, Chet said, patting his empty pockets. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a roll of money. He quickly counted out several large bills. Leo stared at him like he'd lost his mind. What are you doing? What's that for? We're leaving it for her, Chet answered hollowly. For the room and the food. 3 times what it's worth. You think that's going to help us?
Chet carefully set the money on the wooden table and looked at the dark bedroom door. Behind it, everything was still quiet as before. "I don't know," he said quietly. "Let's get out of here, now." They ran out of the house. They jumped in the car and turned the engine over. Leo looked in the rearview mirror. Mama Julie was standing on the porch, arms folded across her chest, watching them go, smiling. Chet floored it. The car shot out onto the road, swallowed itself in the fog, and within seconds, the white house with the porch and the swing had disappeared around the bend.
The boys drove in silence. Leo was the first to break. "We didn't take anything." Chet squeezed the wheel tighter and said nothing. "Chet, we didn't take anything from her." "Yeah," he said shortly. "She said it herself. A healer doesn't do harm if you leave her alone. And we left her alone. In the end, we put it all back." Chet stared stubbornly at the road ahead. The fog in front of the hood stood like a solid wall. The headlights couldn't punch through it. They only lit up a couple of meters of asphalt, and beyond that was absolute emptiness. Leo started talking again, trying to calm himself down. "And we left her money. In exchange. You think she'll let us go?" Chet stared into the gray murk for a long time. "She should," he finally got out. That word hung in the car like a dead weight. Should. Not will. Only should. Leo reached into his jacket pocket for his cigarettes. His fingers found the familiar pack, and something else next to it. Small, cold, and metal. He pulled his hand out and went still. On his palm lay the ring. That same ring with the dark stone in the silver setting, the one that had been sitting on the dish. Leo was ready to swear he had put it back. He remembered clearly putting it back. He had seen with his own eyes the ring touch the bottom of the dish. But somehow, the ring had ended up in his pocket. Leo's voice shook. "Chet. What now? Brake. Stop!" Chet slammed hard on the brakes. The car stopped in the middle of the empty highway. "What happened?" Leo silently held out his open palm. Chet stared at the silver ring. "I didn't take it, Chet. I swear to you," Leo nearly screamed. "I put it back. I saw myself do it." Chet silently snatched the ring, lowered his side window, and hurled it into the dark with all his strength. Far out, past the whole shoulder of the road, straight into the thick fog and the swamp grass. For several seconds, the two of them listened fearfully to the silence of the night. Chet closed the window and hit the gas hard. The engine roared and the car moved forward again. They drove in total silence. A minute passed. Leo happened to glance down and went rigid. The ring was lying on the plastic panel, right between their seats. A deep, dark stone, a silver setting, completely dry and clean, as though it hadn't just been thrown into a filthy swamp, but had simply been picked up and carefully set right there. Leo was paralyzed with terror. He couldn't move at all. Chet hadn't noticed the ring yet. He drove with tense concentration, peering into the fog and the silhouettes of scattered cypress trees flickering past outside the window. And then, somewhere out in the swamps, many miles away, through the thick curtain of fog, an owl called. Just once, low and hollow. That sound didn't come from the trees. It rose from somewhere beneath the earth, from right under the wheels of their car. Leo couldn't take his eyes off the ring. Chet watched the road. The car drove at full speed into the bottomless dark of Louisiana. This story is not just a piece of New Orleans folklore. It's about the fact that every action has its price. You can't walk into someone's house, take what doesn't belong to you, and then hope to settle the debt by leaving money on a table. You can't undo real wrongdoing by changing your mind at the last minute. What has been disturbed will not be at peace, and no one has ever outrun their reckoning
just by pressing the gas pedal.
Friends, if this story made you shudder and hold your breath, please leave a like. Your ratings and comments help the channel reach more people, and they inspire me to search for new, dark, and gripping stories. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. There are many more dark roads ahead.